Hello, everyone. Welcome to, I think this is week 8. So week 8, it is a recycle review. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Um, let's see, share. Okay. All right. So um, week 8 is on the recycler view, and we do need this information to go ahead and complete assignment 4, which is due in a week from today. So assignment 4 is due a week from today. Just a quick announcement. I did finish grading assignments 2, and I am working on assignment 3. So some of you should have already gotten your grades there. I will make sure to finish assignment 3 for assignment 4 is due. If you have any questions, to reach out to me. I'm available through email as well as to meet over Zoom if you have any questions. But today we're going to cover recycler review, which is chapter 10 of the criminal intent. And if you download this one, then you should be able to see enough example or a good example of what is expected for assignment 4. But I check out this week 7 is slides to go over what is the expectation for assignment 4, and I'll go ahead and cover that a little bit as I go through the lecture. It should be a pretty quick lecture. We're just going to be adding on, what we talked about last week when it came to the fragments. So remember, this one, the main focus is using fragments. So before we did on activities, so now we're doing it on fragments. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and share PowerPoint. Okay, so hopefully it's sharing. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my video here. All right. So in here we have display lists with the recycler view. So the point of this this lecture is to be able to list or display the list of the glucose monitor that we are building for assignment 4. So last week we talked about fragments and how fragments, right, are container or are displayed inside of the activity. So you have a main activity, and this main activity displays the fragments. And we had to we talked about one specific fragment last week, and that was the entry fragment. And in this entry fragment, you were supposed to enter details about your glucose monitor. For example, the the glucose levels for fasting, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then you were from those numbers, you're supposed to be able to determine whether it was normal or abnormal or hypoglycemic, and then create a checkmark based on that. And so we talked about how we don't want to be able to create a whole new activity for every single entry that we have. And that's why we use fragments. So fragments allow us to be able to make it very lightweight and keep the same format for any new entry that we create. And so, oops. What will we learn in this lecture? Well, we're going to learn how to use the recycler view to maintain, in our case, it would be the glucose data. In this case, it's the crime data in the crime intent app, and how to customize the recycler view to display a list. Okay, so these are the two things that we're going to be learning. And so you'll see that, when we have this, you'll be creating a list for every new entry that you create. So you will have a display list. Now, for this app, just one or two is fine. However, if you want to go ahead and create a list and randomly generate that data, that is up to you. So that's great. That's going above and beyond. Okay. So then a view model. This is just a recap of what a view model is. A view model is related to one particular screen and is a great place to put logic involved in formatting the data to display that on the screen. The view model holds the model object as well as decorates the model. And so when we talk about model, I'm talking about the model class. And this model class is just, a place to be able to I guess, hold the data as well as so the view model holds onto the model object and decorates the actual model. So using a view model aggregates all the data that the screen needs in one place and formats the data and makes it easy to access the end result. So including the view model dependencies, to do this, again, we have to go ahead and there's one other way. When you go ahead and create a new view model, you'll automatically add it to um, the Gradle app Kotlin file, Gradle app file that shows up um, automatically as you do this import. Before, this was not the case. So in previous versions of Android, you actually had to go in there and do it manually. But it seems like with this new updates, it's able to update on its own as long as you're doing the imports correctly, or sorry, creating the classes correctly, in this case the view models correctly. Okay, so to use the class on the app project, we need to include the library in the project's list of dependencies, and this is in the build.gradle file. And this represents the Gradle project's dependencies. Okay. All right. So then we have the dependencies, right? So this is inside of your app build grade model, and these dependencies, are doing the implementation of the Android lifecycle. In this case, is the uh, Android X lifecycle dash view model Kotlin 2. In the previous version it was 2.6, but we've done this in the previous assignment. So same idea as before. This is more of like a recap, okay, of what we've done before. And so for the crime list view model, in here we have the value of crimes, and this is a mutable list. So that's a new thing that we're going to add here. So in this mutable list, for in this case, we create a list of the crimes. So we do have an init, and then it's like when I was transferring this, it didn't say correctly, but uh, it should be there. Oops. Okay. Then we have a logic function, or yeah, logic for of integer 1 until 100. So this is creating a list of up to 100 crimes in here, and then this is, calling in a random UUID number, uh, in this case the title, and then we give it a number to make sure that this is a crime number. So this is your I from here, from the for loop, and then we set the date in this case, and then whether it's solved or not. So this is the same idea that you're going to be using for creating your list of the glucose levels. So pretty much you can do 0 to 100, you could do less. It's pretty much up to you, but we want to make sure that it's enough where your screen can actually scroll down. Okay, so make sure to do that. So in here, right, for your ID, it would be instead of the value of crime, you would switch it to something like glucose, right? Because we're measuring the glucose, not the crime. So it would be like glucose is equal to a mutable list of, and then glucose, and then do an init, and then the value of glucose is equal to, and then we call in the class glucose in here. So this is a class that we're going to be calling, that's the model class. In our case, it's the glucose class. Okay, and so then we have that, and then we're going to add our values. So in this case, it would be the fasting levels that we need. And then obviously at the end of this for loop, just go ahead and create new ones. So that's the equals plus. So implementing crime list fragment. I showed you last week on how to go ahead and create the list fragment, and that is just when you create a new file, right? You go ahead and add a new file, you make sure you go into the fragment section, and then make sure you're selecting the list type of fragment. In this list type of fragment, you have to set it up so that it creates the the class. So in this case, the glucose class on its own, where that's the model class on its own. It'll create it for you, as well as it will create the view, so the XML file for you. Okay, the actual UI file, fragment UI. And so in here for this crime list fragment, we have a crime list fragment calls in a fragment, and then we have the private value the crime list view model. For us, it would be the glucose list view model, and then that is calling the crime, or again, the glucose list view model for us. And then we have an override function to uncreate. From here, we get to create, and for this case, it's a log tag, which displays the total crimes. Okay. So a view model and a fragment. How does that work? Well, we have the fragment instance, and then this fragment instance, we can go ahead and call in configuration changes. So for example, when we're editing uh, our, uh, let's say our inputs, right? And so then it recreates a fragment instance, and then it in the view model, it pulls in the fragment UI data. Okay, so the view model is actually the one pulling out the UI data that you were editing here when you were entering the data. So in here, and it goes into the view model. And remember, this view model holds your actual data, so it doesn't go away. So the view model is going to hold the list of the data for your model, and that's the one that you're gonna, or the view model is also in charge of displaying it for the fragment UI data. So that's where it goes. And so hosting the crime list fragments in the main activity. In here, again, we have the main activity class, we have the uncreate, and the layout is still going to be the main activity. However, right, what's going to happen in our main activity XML file? Well, remember this is a fragment container view. So in this fragment container view, all we're doing is calling in the Android, in this case, name, right? So we still have to give it an ID, we still have to do the layout and the context. But in here, we're giving an Android name. And this is where you're going to go ahead and put in your your glucose list fragment uh, package here. Okay, so you're going to call it in here. Instead of this, you're going to be calling the name equal to, and then pointing it. In our case, it would be like edu Arizona, and then the name of the your Arizona infosec, your name, full name, and then dodge the name of the application that you named it, and obviously the crime list fragment class in this case. Okay. So then if you run the app now, so in this case, it was just gonna display this, by just adding the main activity and adding that because there's no data in there. Okay. So then to add the recycler view, we have to go ahead and add the recycler view inside of our dependencies in the app build Gradle. So go ahead and look up what is that recycler view. And I'm, actually I'm going to go ahead and make an announcement. And one way to do this, I forgot to look it up before class, but one way to do this is just going to Android Developer, and then there's going to give you the most updated Android Recycler View class, and I can show you how to get there, and maybe I'll do that after the lecture if I don't forget. Okay, so after you update the configuration file, you obviously need to sync the Gradle files. And so to add a crime list fragments layout, you go ahead and add a new resource file. In this case, is the fragment. And for this instance, it was a fragment crime list, but for us, it's going to be the glucose crime list. Oh, not sorry, the fragment glucose list. Okay, and then we have the root element in there. We go ahead and add the Android X recycler view, then the resources, and then the layout, and then do the country code. Okay, so I'll show you how to do this, and this is for the resource layout file. But if I'm not mistaken, it already creates it for us when we're doing when we are doing the when we're doing the list fragment when we're adding this in our code. Okay, so you might have to skip this step because it already does it for you. But if it doesn't, I'll show you how to do that with the new resource file. Okay. But yeah, if you did it like I showed you last week, you shouldn't have to do this part right here. It'll do it on its own. But from here, what goes inside of the fragment glucose list is that you're going to be naming it the ID. In this case, it would be for us glucose recycler view. Okay, so given giving it that ID. And so setting up the view for the crime list fragment. In this case, we have a class list fragment, and we have to go ahead and bind it. Okay, so we have the binding, and then making sure that there's no null value. So if it's a new value, then it can access the binding because it's null, and making sure that the view is actually visible. From there, and again, this is the glucose list fragment. We have the private value of the crime list view model, or in our case, glucose list view model. And then we have the onCreate view. We do the inflator, the container, and the save instance. So all this stays pretty much the same for our assignment. Okay, and then all you have to do is pretty much do the binding. So binding is very important. And then after override function, do the onDestroy. Remember, this is part of the life cycle. And onDestroy view if the binding is, and set the binding equal to null. If you're just destroying, just set binding equal to null. Okay. So then setting up the layout manager, and this layout manager, remember, is the list fragment. Okay. Sorry, it's in the list fragment. And to do this, we pretty much have to do the binding dot, and then we do the glucose recycler view dot layout manager, and we set the linear layout manager context. Okay, with this linear layout, there are different types of layouts. However, I suggest that you keep the linear layout so that we have the actual list. But you could go ahead and change that if you feel like it. But this is, adding that to make sure that we have the layout manager. Now for the recycler view, right? What is the recycler view? I've been talking about it, but what is it really? The recycler view is a subclass of a view group, okay? It displays a list of the child view, objects one for each item in your list of items, and then the child view could be either complex or simple. So you see all these instances, these dotted boxes right here. Well, that's a child view. Okay, so this child view, sorry, this is a so this is the child view, and you have a whole list of them duplicated. And why? The reason why it's called recycler, because you're pretty much recycling the same view over and over again to create a list. But pretty much inside of your app, and this is part of the fragment, right? The fragment list you will see, because you're setting it as your recycler view. Every time that you create a new entry, it's going to add it to the list. And all of them are going to be looking similar, as in the same format. Obviously, different data, different dates for us. Okay? But that's all it is. It's a subclass of the view group. Okay? And so a recycler view uses an adapter to control the data source. So that is another file that when you, again, go ahead and create the fragment list, it creates this file on its own. That was not the case before this version of Android, so you actually got it easier than the previous classes, where things are automatically created for you if you do them correctly. Okay, so the recycler view uses the adapter to control the data source. It takes the adapter, it asks the adapter to create the view holder objects to inflate the layout, and then holds the reference or if the recyclers, or it recycles one of them from the existing stack. Okay, so the recycler view comes with the default animations, and it has a layout manager. And so in here, this is how pretty much, or what we have here. You have the highlight is wrong in here. Let me see. Okay, so in here, we have the binding, and then we have the fragment list binding. We have to inflate and then make sure that the inflator and container, and then in this case it was set to false. But pretty much we need to add this line there and there. Okay. So a recycler view with the child views, this is how it looks. And to do this, we have to go into the list item, and then the glucose XML file. Again, this XML file is automatically created when you do the fragment. Okay, so it creates two XML files when you're doing the list fragment, and this is the child one pretty much. And so in here, or that's the item. So in here, we pretty much, again, keep it very simple. In our case, it should be super simple. Just a date, whether the glucose was normal or abnormal, and a checkbox, and the average. Okay, so those are the three things, but pretty simple. Um, and yeah, so that's pretty much what we have in there. Okay, keep it simple. So the recycler view expects an item view to be wrapped in an instance of a view holder, and a view holder stores the reference of an item's view and sometimes reference to a specific widget within that view. So in here, we have the view holder, right? And then it pulls in the view item, so it calls into the view item and then displays that view. Okay, so the view holder, so the recycler expects an item view to be wrapped in an instance of a view holder. So view holder is something that you get to keep in there. Okay, so in here, the view holder is the one that allows us to view each item. Okay, so it allows us to view each one of the items, and this is the recycler view. So this is how the view holder visualizes things. So then we have the adapter and the recycler view. And again, right, an adapter is a controller object that sits between this recycler view and the data and set that recycler view, how the recycler view should display. Then we have the adapter's responsibility, which include creating the necessary view holder when it's asked, binding the view holder to the data from the model layer when asked, and then so that's just the adapter responsibility. So create the necessary view holder when it's being asked, and then binding that view holder. So that's what the adapter does. And the recycler view asks asks the adapter to create the new view holder, and also asks the adapter to bind a view holder to the item from backing the data at any given precision. All right, so extending the recycler view dot adapter. So in here we have the class. So we have the class, and then we have the glucose list adapter. And this again, list adapter, go ahead and call in the list of our model data. Here in this case it was crime. For us it's going to be glucose. Then we have the recycler view dot adapter, and then calling in the holder. So the model holder in this case would be the glucose holder for us, but pretty much that's how we do it. Okay. All right, so then we have the beginning of the view holder, and here we have a class called the crime holder. For us it's going to be the glucose holder. And then we're just going to be binding the list of the items that we're binding here, calling the recycler view dot view holder, and then binding it to the root. Okay. So then creating in this case, creating the crime adapter for us is going to be the glucose adapter. We have a class called list adapter. We call in the private variable. In this case, it would be glucose for us. Then we have the recycler view dot adapter holder. We have the override function. Then we call in the holder, right? The model holder. We do the inflating, the binding, and then on the bind view model, go ahead and bind the things that we want to display on the child view. In this case, it would be, for this case, is the title and the date. For us, it would be the glucose probably average, the date, and the where things is abnormal or normal. Okay. So the adapter sits between the recycler and the data, as I mentioned. So we have the crime holder here. This is the recycler view, right? And the crime holder goes ahead and creates a new item view each time. And the adapter, right, go ahead and it sits again between the recycler view and the data, and so it goes in the list of the crimes, so one crime at a time, when we press on this recycler view item. So how does the conversation go? Well, the recycler view tells them, hey, I need a view holder, right? So we use the onCreate view holder function here. And so then the adapter says, okay, and then it inflates an item view, creates a new view, and the holder passes it back. So then the recycler view receives the view holder, and then it goes ahead and populates the view holder with the data, in this case at index 0. So that's the first one. But then as you go through the rotations, it obviously is going to go ahead and create more of different indexes. And this is okay. In this case, we get the index and sets the text space on that index number that was provided. Okay. So then setting an adapter to do this, going inside of the list fragment, we have the value of the model, so in this case crimes for us it would be glucoses. We have the value of the adapter, calling in uh, the list adapter, the glucose list adapter class in our case, calling the crimes, and then doing the recycler view adapter, and we just set that equal to adapter. Okay. All right, so this is how it looks with all the indexes going from 0 to, in this case, 13, but it actually generates all the way to 100 based on our first, or at the beginning of the slides, what we saw. And so then finally the crime holder, this one, or the class, how it looks, right? The holder, the model holder. In this case, we have the list, the binding. So this is going to go ahead and do the list item binding. We call in the recycler view, the view holder. We're binding the two things that we wanted to see display on that list. In this case, it was just the title and the date. So this pretty much remains the same. And then calling the binding class, this is part of the list adapter. Again, binding on view, unbind view holder, doing the crime holder position, etc. Using the position of the glucoses in our case, and doing that holder.bind. So all this code that you see here should be very, very similar to what we need for the assignment 4. Just so you know, we're just pretty much just changing our code from crime to glucose. And then obviously adding, the information instead of the title would be the average and the check mark to see if, things are there, to see if it's normal or abnormal. Okay. And so, quick review. Creating the recycler view, so you declare the recycler view in a layout and reference it in a code. You create a custom item layout for the recycler view for its items, and then create the view holder for its list. Connect the data source of the recycler view and handle the logic by creating the recycler view adapter. Then finally attach the adapter to the recycler view. Okay, so this is chapter 10. Chapter 10 code is on D2L. I would encourage you to take a look at that code, see, how that's going. Take a look at chapter 10 and how the programming goes. And then I will go ahead and, first let me go ahead and show you. Okay, Android developer. So where to find Android developers is with an S. Okay, and then we could just search here, and then what was it? I forgot we were. Let me go back to. I said I was gonna show you how to find that, but again, all this is automatically generated if you did it. So pretty much, so that one was already done with the view model, and this was I think it was like the recycler view. So what version of the recycler view? I think it was the recycler view. So I'm just gonna put in here, recycler view. Okay, and Jetpack. All right, so in here, it is 1.4. Kotlin version. Yeah, it's 1.4. So this is what you would be adding in your dependencies if you were to be adding the recycler view. But again, if you did it correctly, it should have been imported on its own. So then let's take a look at, I didn't get a chance to work on the sample code, but as you can see in here, right, the glucose adapter was created on its own. And then it comes with the classes that you need. However, you do need to go ahead and edit them, right? So for example, in here, it is the glucose adapter. The on view holder is there. and then all those classes in there. Now, there's the placeholder content. This is the glucose class, the data class that you created. The glucose, again, I haven't changed it, so pretty much when you in this case I just put in glucose history list fragment. To do this, I'll just do it one more time. Right, you go into new, you go into fragment and select the fragment list. And this fragment list go ahead and creates it for you. Just make sure that you call in the different, so in this case, the fragment class name would be glucose. And I'll make it capital. And it's not gonna let me do it because the class already exists. But pretty much this is, oops, this is the wrong one. Let me go back to that. Is the object hind. Okay, it's in here. Object would be glucose. Okay, and take a look at the slides from the previous module. I did have a screenshot of what information to put here, but pretty much this creates your layout file, your list, and your adapter class as well. Okay, so just put finish and it'll create it for you, and then it'll create your layout file. So in here we have the list item, right? So this is your list that I was talking about. Then this is the actual history list. So this is just one item, okay? And this is the list, this is the single entry that you get to modify, and then the main activity, which just holds the container view. Okay, so let's take a look at, okay, so the list item, in this case glucose, holds that recycler view. And again, it pretty much, it creates it on its own. So you don't have to even like mess, well, you should take a look at this file, but with the new Android Studio, it creates it for you. But it tells you there. Okay. All right. So what's the other thing? If you need to make changes to your Gradle file, make sure it's the module app file, and then again make the changes probably in here. This is where you can go ahead and make your changes for adding the implementations or the dependencies. Don't forget about adding your binding, build binding. Without this, you can't bind anything. And what I'm missing here, okay, so not my layout, okay. So what I'm missing here, we have the glucose adapter. I'm missing the view models, okay. So go ahead and add a view model in here to make sure that you have everything in. What I'm going to go ahead and do is probably by Thursday, I'll stop sharing. By Thursday, I will go ahead and create a short video on getting this app done and showing us a short demo of everything that you need. But pretty much this should be matching almost exactly chapter 10 of the book. You're just modifying some things. For example, the name instead of crimes, it would be glucose. Your list should be different. Your entry will obviously look different because you're entering more data. And yeah, that's it. So if you do have any questions, please email me. I can go ahead and meet with you, uh, and I'll be around. So we'll see you soon.